Hello everyone and welcome to another amazing functional medicine healing journey episode. I'm Danny Banai and I'm a functional medicine certified health coach. My mission is to make the world a healthier place. Through Lyle's amazing healing journey, you will discover how he was able to stabilize diabetes type 1 symptoms after more than 27 years of suffering, what he did on the way and how he deals with it today. Lyle Haugen is a type 1 diabetic and registered nutrition health coach. Diagnosed in 1985, a week after surviving an industrial explosion at a natural gas facility. The condition forced him to make change and lost his profession of commercial diving. His empathy is with those who have experienced a similar life-changing event. For 27 years, he followed all the various advice given by his doctors and nutritionists. None of it allow him to have consistent, controllable, or reliable blood sugars. His health deteriorated until he decided to take control of his own health and address the root causes of his problem. After solving this issue personally, the knowledge obtained from his journey has been focused on coaching others who suffer from similar challenge. Welcome Lyle Haugen and thank you for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me, Danny. I appreciate being on your show. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure. You have such amazing story. It will be, it's not be okay if I won't interview you today.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. So how do you feel today?
Well, I feel fantastic. We have an old expression here, any better, I'd still be naked in bed, right?
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that you have a good energy. So, Lyle, before we dig in, we want people to get to know you better. Tell us about yourself in short.
Well, I've been type 1 diabetic I'm on my 35th year.
Mm-hmm.
That came about as the result of an industrial accident when I worked in the oil and gas industry in northern Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was I had opened the door of a building one day and it was full of natural gas and heat source. So all I had to do was introduce oxygen, and it spontaneously combusted and threw me 45 feet from the building.
Wow! Like in the movie, basically.
Even better.
Okay.
And I was at the time, northern Canada is pretty desolate, so I was probably 35, maybe 40 miles from any kind of help.
Wow.
So I had to kind of pack
Scary.
myself. I was out in a rubber tired backhoe across. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie or show called Ice Road Truckers.
No, but
okay. Well, it's in the wintertime. In the wintertime, all the roads, they freeze up, so then you can make a road out of the ice, and that's kind of where I was at in the middle of winter, out with a rubber tired backhoe, like 35 miles from camp. So
wow,
it was a bit of a story.
Sound like dramatic start. Okay.
Yeah. So what that resulted in, Danny, was that created I was kind of in a bit of a perfect storm, and that was sort of the final lightning strike.
Mm-hmm.
The type of foods that I was eating in camp, the time that you had in between getting back and forth to where you could get more sustenance or even water or that type of thing, kind of put the body at stress. I was at stress myself just because it was a new job, new area, things on the mind. But what I found with my type 1 was when I first tried to learn everything and manage my disease. So I was going to classes and courses and different things that the medical industry had put on for us. I ran into a gentleman that I said, what do you think caused your diabetes? And he says, well, I didn't have it until I got married. So the stress of a new marriage within 6 months of being married brought about his type 1 diabetes.
Wow.
So we can talk about that later.
We will talk about it later. It sounds like today we're going to have a special and unique knowledge and information about diabetes type 1, how it can start, what are the triggers. So our next question is, as you already know, the purpose of our project is to inspire and give hope to people all over the world by sharing personal healing journey. So
Great.
tell us, Lyle, what did you suffer from and for how long?
Well, I think I kind of mentioned already, I've been on my 35th year of type 1 diabetes.
Okay.
For 27 of those years, though, even though I followed all the medical recommendations and took all the training and the classes and the courses and did everything they suggested I do, there was no such thing as blood sugar control or balance. So maybe to help your listeners a little bit, some that are aware of diabetes, it'll be a repeat for you. But here's what happens. In our bloodstream, we need a certain amount of glucose traveling throughout the system to provide energy to all the cells in the body, including the brain. That level is supposed to be between about 4 millimoles, they call it. It's just a measurement. Don't get hung up on it. To 8 millimoles. Call it percentage to make it easier for you to understand. So between 4% and 8%. So if you took a glass of water and you put 1 teaspoon of sugar in it, that might be 4%. If you put 2 teaspoons of sugar in it, there's your 8%.
Okay.
So the difference of balancing your blood sugar is basically 1 or 2 teaspoons of sugar away from being over or underdone.
Wow, nice example, really. Okay, so you mentioned that you suffer from diabetes type 1. Can you explain exactly what is it, what causing it?
All right, so there's been a lot of research in the last few years, not so much specifically on the cure for type 1 diabetes, because that's where all the money is being spent. And if you know anything about looking for cures, they've been looking for cures for cancer for I don't know how many years, and nobody seems to be able to find anything. Yet we can go to the moon, so I don't understand this. You know what I'm getting at here?
Yeah.
I think it's more of a monetary thing because there's a lot more money in, doling out things little by little than there is actually finding an entire cure, right? So now getting back with the type 1, what essentially takes place is it's classified as an autoimmune disease. So what that means is your immune system turns on itself,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of protecting your body from invaders, it attacks your body.
Okay.
So for type 1, what happens is there's a, what is it called now? An immunoglobulin, doesn't really matter. It would just be complicated words anyway. So there's a test you can do to find out if your body is actually attacking itself.
Okay. And now how it's related to you, like what was the trigger for you? You mentioned at the beginning that
Right. So you need to develop a perfect storm. So what happens is this. You got to understand a little bit about physiology. So from the mouth to the back end, that's about 28, 30 feet. If you stretched out all the intestines and everything else, it's like a big garden hose, right?
Okay.
So we have to kind of wrap our brain around the fact that even though it's inside our body, it's outside.
Okay.
So everything that's in from the mouth to the back end there is still technically outside of the body. So the intestine's job is to absorb nutrients. Okay. But if we do damage to that intestine, which there's a lot of research on this, it's called increased intestinal permeability, or commonly known as leaky gut.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is, if you can see my fingers there, this is kind of like the ilii inside the absorption towers in the small intestine. But turn it around, you see the crack in my hand right here?
Yeah.
If you actually visualize between each finger, there'd be a seam there. This would be 1 cell, that would be 2, 3, and so on. Mm-hmm. So if you get certain particulate falling in between here and irritating these joints, the body actually sends out a hormone called zonulin, which will unstitch those 2 cells from each other and allow this particulate to fall through.
Okay, so in our term, it's called leaky gut, basically.
Correct. Yeah, that's the easy way to call it. Now, when those entire proteins, instead of just nutrients, and those entire proteins cross over to the other side, then the immune system attacks it. So all our white blood cells, there's about 80% of them are right on the backside of the intestine. They're just waiting here to sort everything out that comes through. Now, let me give you this sort of existentially. If you take that and to the extreme, if you've got a bunch of holes in the intestine, there's a lot of protein coming in. There's a lot of activity from the white blood cells. You know that old expression, what is big is small and what is small is big? What I mean by that is you've got a war going on in there.
Okay.
All the white blood cells are the soldiers, all right? We've got invaders, so they're fighting all the invaders. If you have so many invaders coming in and swimming around and getting past the soldiers and they're all out fighting, you cannot help but get collateral damage.
Got it.
So what happens
when
is
you
those proteins can be very similarly structured. So if you take the gluten protein from wheat and you compare it to a corn protein or a rice protein or any of the other grains that are out there, they will fall within an 85 to 87% match of DNA identification. They're almost identical. The immune system, though, so it doesn't have to create a white blood cell for each individual grain, it only hits on a 65% match.
Okay, interesting.
So once you become susceptible to the wheat proteins and you've developed an antibody to them, you've developed now an antibody to all the grains.
Okay.
And those can now be an irritant to your body. Right?
Okay, so now the body takes basically things that are similar to gluten, right?
Correct. And that happens to be in the islets of Langerhans and the pancreas, and it's called the beta cells, which produce insulin.
So you want to tell me that the cells that you just mentioned in the beta cells are identical, or not identical, but look similar in the cellular level to gluten?
Their protein structure is similar enough that if you develop an antibody to it and you have enough of this product in your system, you could start to attack your own beta cells.
Wow.
Now, this whole process works the same way for another autoimmune disease called hypothyroidism, Graves' disease, which is the thyroid. And it does the same thing there because there's free gluten floating around in the bloodstream because it's gotten through the gut. It can rest up against that thyroid, and then the next thing you know, your white blood cells are attacking your thyroid.
Because the gluten are...
Right. Biomimicry, they call it, because it looks like something else, so it gets attacked.
Wow. So you explain us like biologically why it's happening. Can we go a little bit up and talk about, in a daily conversation, how we can explain it to someone that he will understand it? I understand.
Okay.
It sounds like you give me a perfect explanation to it, but what kind of thing people do that eventually causing it? They're just eating a food that rich in gluten, or they having a lot of stress in their life? What exactly are the...
Great question, and you hit on two of the major ones. So the first thing is, what environmental damage are we putting into our body? So what kind of damage products? So a lot of processed foods have issues with our body. They process foods to find traits, and I'll call them gimmicks, to make you want to eat more. So we have this is a little sidetrack here, but our taste profiles are designed and have been evolved over the eons to identify safe or not so safe foods to eat.
Okay.
They've also been identified or developed so that you can identify even the certain nutrient that we essentially, or is essential for us. And this is what Doritos, all right, the chip company, did with their plain old corn chip. It was kind of a boring corn chip, and then they started putting these flavorings on it. Well, these flavorings, some are natural and some are artificial. If you take a tomato and break it down in a gas chromatograph, which is to find all the individual molecules that comprise that tomato, they've identified the ones that we can pick up on taste profile.
Okay.
So those ones that are essential for us, for repairing our body and that our body needs to work with have a certain highlight or a certain note that we can pick up. Well, they've taken that note out of whatever it is that we like and they put it into the chip
Okay.
as an artificial marker.
Flavor. Okay.
So we eat it and we go, oh, God, we need that. Oh, that's so good. Oh, I know that's so good. Oh, that's great for me. But you can't stop eating it because what you're saying is great for you. It's not getting that reception down below saying, no, 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 that's not what we got. We didn't get what
Oh,
you said.
okay.
We didn't get what you said we were going to get. So keep eating.
And then what happened when we trick our body?
Well, then we end up always overeating more than what we should on certain types of foods because they are designed to make us finish them. I mean, even their advertising says, I bet you can't just eat one.
Okay, so this is the first step that you
So
said,
this is the
right?
first step.
The first
We
step
end
that
up
you're just eating a lot of processed food because they crack the flavor that make us eat a lot of it.
exactly, and that goes for a lot of other foods. That goes for donuts. That goes for bagels. That goes
Yeah.
for anything. It has that flavor profile that we think we need, but it really doesn't translate itself to nutrients or energy or the things that we need to break down to sustain our bodies.
Mm. So we're bringing a lot of food to our body that basically not have a lot of positive and good nutrition to our body.
Right.
Just load it up with a lot of
Exactly.
things that it's not relevant.
Exactly. So now the problem with wheat, especially if it's not in its close to whole grain state, there's several problems with it. But one of the problems when we use white bread is as it tries to digest in our system, it doesn't break down very good. All right. Gluten is in the lectin family. Don't worry about the names. Lectin is a protein that protects plants because plants can't run away. All right. They don't have any legs, so they have to find a way to protect their babies. So they wrap all their little grain heads in lectin. All right. It's a protein that there is no bacteria on this planet can break down.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. Now, if you take that grain and you watch wild animals eat it, you follow them around long enough and it goes out the back door of them, you'll see entire grain heads in their feces.
Okay.
Now you have to beg yourself and ask yourself a question. If that grain just went through 4 stomachs, which most ungulants have,
Okay.
and it didn't digest, what makes you think we can do it on our little half stomach that we got packed in here?
Okay. So basically, by process it and make it more bioavailable, we enter it to our body, and then it causing damage.
Yeah, it ends up causing damage, and
Instead of just
the
going
wheat,
away.
right, when the wheat doesn't have a lot of bran left in it or a lot of fiber, then it rests in our intestines and it kind of acts like toothpaste in there. So if you've ever tried to get toothpaste out of your toothpaste, you squeeze there's always these arguments, do you squeeze from the end or from the middle?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. If you squeeze it from the middle, it goes both directions. And the way the intestine works is it's a peristaltic movement. So one muscle constricts here, pushes it this way, then the next muscle constricts, and it just keeps moving it along. But with wheat in there, you go like this, and it goes both directions.
Yeah. So okay.
So the transit time gets messed up.
So it's always there and causing problem, basically.
Correct.
Got it.
Now the next thing is if you can't digest a certain food particle that you've put into you, like this lectin I'm talking about. Let's try to visualize really small. So let's just use something that we all know about. If you got a pocket full of change, you got pennies, dimes, nickels, that type of thing, and a quarter. Let's say you got that laying out on your table. Let's say the quarter is a food product. And let's say the penny and the dime are 2 different bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
They come up close to it. They rest near the quarter. They can communicate each other with chemistry. They can say, oh, hey, we're related to each other, so don't try to digest me. And then they check with the quarter, and the quarter doesn't make any comment back, but they figure out they can actually read the DNA on that quarter if it's a whole food product, not broken down. And then it knows exactly what enzymes and chemistry to exude out of itself in the vicinity of this quarter, which will then start to break down the quarter into its food derivatives. Okay.
Okay.
So then the bug just by osmosis absorbs it back into itself. And if it gets fed, it's happy. So it just keeps exuding that same chemical out, bringing food back in. And the excess that breaks down is what you and I live on.
Okay.
So we got a symbiotic, meaning we work together with the bacteria down there. The bacteria actually does the work and we get the benefit of it. So now if you put something in there that's been highly processed, doesn't really have a DNA marker to it, or it's, like lectin, something very hard to digest, that bacteria, if it can't get it on its first guess of chemistry, will start to increase the chemistry until it finds out at random what will break that food down. And a lot of times what happens if we continue to do this to our body, put these unknown products in there that the bugs can't figure out what they are, the bacteria, they put out such a chemistry that it will either break down the food or break down your gut.
Wow. Bam. Bam. Extremely interesting the way that our body and gut and the bacteria inside our gut work. And
it's fascinating.
Huh?
It's fascinating.
Yeah, wow. You explain it very well. I'm amazed. And I'm hope that, other people will understand how everything is connected. So
Right.
we will go over to our next question because we want, we want eventually to share your healing journey and not make it a science interview.
Yeah, no worries.
Although it's very, very, very interesting. So in the same subject, how did you feel when you had the diabetic type 1 disease and all the autoimmune disease? How did you feel?
That's a great question. I don't know if I really had...
how it make you feel that you don't see any solution, that you just need to manage it? Did you have...
Well, here's how I felt. First of all, I lost my career. I knew I couldn't go back to that. So I had to try to figure something out. So I was scrambling either to go back to school or be in business. Those were my two choices I had settled on. So I really didn't, as far as feeling sorry for myself, I really didn't have any time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, all right, at the age of 22, I'm now a type 1 diabetic. I know I can see what a type 2 has done to my mother over the number of years that she's been living with it.
Okay.
I need to try to figure out what can I do to keep this under decent control so that I can have a reasonable life. Because unfortunately, with the diagnosis of type 1, if you're not managing it correctly or it goes out of whack all of a sudden and you don't have the ability to control it, or all of a sudden there's no insulin available to you to manage it, you're basically dead in 2 weeks.
Whoa. Very
so how would you feel about
conclusion?
That's why I want to turn this.
I'm not gonna feel good about this.
You don't really have any choice, but you have to understand that at any point in time, if something happens, you could be 2 weeks from being dead.
Wow. So I don't want to imagine how is to live with this awareness, and
it becomes taxing for a lot of us. We're probably running 90-95% depression in the type 1 and type 2. Because it's a physiological stress on us when it's out of whack. So it puts pressure on our body, on the physiology of it. And when we have pressure on our physiology, we end up with kind of a mental depression.
Yeah. It's amazing how the physical influence the mental and how the mental influence the physical, like how everything is connected as a functional medicine way. So our last question in this subject is, what was the most difficult thing for you? And then we will go over to the happy side of the interview.
Okay, sure. No worries. I would think the most difficult thing for me was just kind of accepting the fact that I wasn't going to be able to do what I wanted to do. So I had to sort of take something that I was, pretty much made up my mind I was doing, and then go, well, can I do something similar? Can I do something in the same similar area. I kept working in the oil and gas industry because it was kind of what I knew, right? But then I went, well, I really don't want to work for somebody. Can I be in business for myself? I've kind of been an entrepreneur most of my life. And turned out I ended up to this point still being an entrepreneur.
Nice.
But what I had to do, Danny, is I had to try to find a profession, a job, whatever you want to call it, a way of making a living that I could wrap my condition around.
Okay,
or,
so it's
or
controlled.
they could wrap their job around my condition, one or the other, right? And that gets difficult, right? Because you need to be blood sugars fluctuate constantly, and there's 3 to 4 legs that I call that I talk about, and then it's number one, the amount of consistent insulin you have in your body, so you can have a nice steady plane of insulin coming in. The types of food you put in, so you don't actually spike your blood sugar, you just kind of slowly raise it, and it can manage with that. And then you need to exercise, because we're living in a day and age that's never happened in the history before. We've got way too much food.
Too much food and too much work on computer. And
too much sitting down and not enough out walking and working and moving around. Even just before I talked to you, I walked in 5 minutes before coming from a half an hour walk. I was out for a half hour walk this morning.
I love opening. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And then the fourth thing that we can't really control is anytime we get into sympathetic nervous mode or fight or flight. So that can be brought about by a slow stress, kind of like a slow burn, or like I was being blown up in a building. So traumatic, some kind of trauma, some kind of information you weren't expecting gets dropped onto you, right?
Yeah.
Instantly our bodies go into sympathetic nervous mode, and the first thing that gets shut down when we're in fight or flight is the intestine.
Yeah.
All the blood stops pouring there, it gets redistributed, and the body actually knows, depending on this threat, whether to put the blood to your arms so you can duke it out, or put them to your legs so you can run like you know what.
Like the demon.
Exactly.
Like the now, if you're there, yeah.
Right. Now, if you're on a set amount of insulin or you have to inject it, these fluctuations you cannot deal with. Okay. Because all of a sudden you've got, let's say, one part of insulin should work for one part of sugar in your system. But now that you're in fight or flight, the liver is squeezed, and now you got 3 or 4 parts of sugar into your system. Wow. So now you have to add more insulin, or you have to do something to try to get it back into line.
Okay, so if I understand you right, the first thing that was very hard for you is that suddenly your dream vanished, right?
Correct.
You had a long training, you were prepared hard to work in your profession, and eventually, because of industrial explosion or industrial accident, it's vanished and it's lived empty, it's lived like something that it's not gonna happen again. And the second thing is how to live with your new disease, like how to manage it with all the difficulty that you have in your life, and how to bring it to your world and exist as a person, survive basically when you have this thing on your back.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing to deal with is that on the outside, I don't look any different than anybody else. I'm just, I got the perfect face for radio,
Nice. So,
but nobody really knows that you have this condition unless you tell them.
Unless you tell them, or right? Something happened and just just passing out or something like that. Unfortunately, so now we're going to the positive side of the interview. Of course, we had to hear about your background and your story and all the difficulty that you have. But now I think is the most important part is how to eventually, how did you recover from it naturally? Like if someone is in the same place you were, share with us what you did, how eventually now you're not dealing with it, or you're dealing with it, but it's in a very controlled environment and you live the life the way that you want.
Great question. Excuse me. So I guess probably the biggest thing I had to do, the hardest thing that I had to come to grips with, was the information I was getting was not helping.
Yeah, what? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
The information that I was receiving from my medical professionals was not helping me.
Oh. Yeah.
I did absolutely everything they told me to do, and I would get a different result every time I did it.
Wow.
Now, if you've got any kind of a scientific sort of background, which I kind of do, right? I'm kind of an engineer sort of by choice, because I like that kind of stuff. That'll drive you nuts. That'll drive you right around the bend if you do the same thing, but you get a different result every time. And it's not even one that you could track back and say, "Oh, I got that result twice. I didn't even get that." So it's very complicated, this body, and trying to piece it all together and get it to work. But what I realized was the body is a process system, no different than the oil and gas process units that I was working on, except for one's made out of steel, the other one's made out of plant material, or, organ material, right?
Okay.
But
so wait a second. Sorry that I'm cutting you. What was like the conventional way they tried to help you that it didn't work? Like, explain it.
All right. So what they had was
it didn't work for you.
They had a standard diet that they gave out back in the 80s. Well, let me backtrack for a second because we got to fill in a little bit here as to why this happened. Back in the 50s, there was a guy, Keys, I believe his last name was. He was a proponent. They were trying to figure out in the 50s why everybody was dying from heart disease. So there was a guy in England, figured that it was carbohydrate and sugar that was causing the blockages in the heart. And there was a guy called Keys in the US that figured it was saturated fat.
I think the second guy won.
Yeah, the saturated fat guy won, right? Because he was a bit of a loudmouth, even though he didn't have good research, right? So what happened then was if you take calories out of one portion, and you say, well, no, we can't have those anymore, you gotta fill it in somewhere else. So they developed a diet in the 70s, which all diabetics were put on, which was about 55% carbohydrate, about 25% or 30% protein, and the rest was a little bit of fats and oils. And then they also put us over to vegetable oils, which are also another carcinogenic problem, right? So the diet they designed in the 70s, they made it for everybody. So you take all the individuality that we have in people and you say, no, you're not an individual, you got to eat this. So now there's variation.
It's one thing that is very problematic with the conventional way, that for them everyone are the same, and there is no they are not looking at someone that is different, and everyone are special.
Right. And the biggest factor, remember we talked about the bugs and the bacteria and the intestines, that's actually where our individuality comes in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if we're not eating for that bacteria that likes to eat what it likes to eat, then we make it mad. Or it disappears. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and then the bad one taking their place.
Right. So the biggest problem they had was they were promoting, because they figured, oh, we got insulin, what's the big deal? Just take more insulin. So if you're eating a higher carbohydrate diet, they just, we'll just take more insulin. The problem you get in with this is control issues. So even if I, visualize back to working on oil and gas industry, if I let a slug of liquid into a container really, really fast, it's going to overwhelm it, right?
Yeah.
Then I have to wait for it to settle out. So if we do the same thing to the body, if we overwhelm it with too much sugar input, do you realize that normal people do this too? When you eat a bagel, there's so much blood sugar increase in your body, you'll go from 4 to 8, almost like a Richter scale.
Wow.
But your body, because it's normal still and it's not diabetic, has little receptors in there, and it talks back and forth, and it goes, oh, you're at 5.5. Put in a shot of insulin because it's gone up from 4.5. And then it goes, oh, we had to raise it, so let's pay attention a little more often. So instead of only checking every 10 or 15 minutes, now it checks every 5 minutes to see where it's at. And it goes, oh no, we got up to 6.5. You better put in 3 more shots of insulin because it doesn't want it to go over 8. And then you get up to about 7, 7.5, and the pancreas goes, oh no. And it throws like 5 shots at it. All right. And then you start coming down a little bit. You'll come off of 8 and you'll start drifting down. And then 2.5 hours later, your blood sugar keeps falling till it's down to close to 4. And then there's that term, you may have heard this before, you get hangry. You're angry and you're hungry at the same time.
Yeah.
That's a non-diabetic pulling a diabetic boner on themselves.
Okay. Can you say shortly what is wrong with having a high sugar in our blood for a period of time? Like what is the negative side of having a lot of sugar in our blood?
Okay, I'll try to keep it simple. So first of all, it is a source of energy for us. We can use some of it, but when it comes in large amounts like that action that I just described to you, the overproduction of insulin to keep it in range, then ends up dropping us down so low that we need to eat again because now we've injected too much insulin.
No, I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about when the insulin doesn't work. Like when you have consistently.
All right. So if you have no insulin, right? So the way insulin works, if you get down to the molecular level, if you have just a single cell, this is a single cell, and here's actual piece of glucose, they're almost the same size. It can't fit into there. There's no mouth in a cell. So if we have the presence of insulin in between there, the insulin tells the cell to make a hole, and then the glucose will stay inside.
Again, not
without insulin.
Yeah, not without insulin. What is the bad side effect of having high sugar in our blood for a period of time? What is causing our body?
It destroys our blood vessels.
Destroyed our blood vessel. Okay.
All right. So if you visualize that 4 to 5% I was talking about in the very beginning, 1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar in a glass of water.
Yeah.
Keep adding the sugar to the water. What does the water turn into? It turns into syrup, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's sticky. It's scratchy, and that's actually what scratches up the blood vessels and causes problems.
Got it.
So you get anything from eye problems are usually the first things that happen because the blood vessels are so small and so tiny, and there's a lot of blood flow to the eyes. So if the sugars are increased, then all of a sudden we're scratching those up. So you can get several different eye conditions from the fact of actually having your retina detached from the back from what are called retinal bleeders.
Okay, got it.
They start to bleed, they don't stop, and boom, you're blind. All right.
Got
it. Heart disease, stroke, kidney problems, all other vascular problems, neurological problems. So you end up with destroying the nerves in your fingers and your toes and your feet, and you don't feel them anymore.
Got it.
So that's what running high blood sugars will do over a period of time, and it takes time. That's the dangerous part. Is people think, well, it's not doing anything to me now, so it must be okay. Well, it's not. It's like taking. Well, I'll give it to you this way, and this might set it up. When my mother died, and she died from the complications of diabetes, she had congestive heart failure, everything else. I had become type 1 before she passed away. She was all upset about that. And the night that she died, she looked at me and she grabbed my hand and she said, son, do not do what I did and don't feel sorry for me. I brought myself to this position one forkful at a time.
Wow. Very hard understanding for her that she realized eventually what she did to herself. Yeah.
She did it to herself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, there's all kinds of... Does that help?
Yeah, it's extremely helpful. So now that we know what are the negative side effects of it and what basically the historical view of how how the American culture, how the American medicine basically treating people with diabetes. So what did you do to recover?
Okay. So I was actually on a job. Again, I was out in the middle of nowhere by myself. I was going to be there for over a week, so I needed to pack all my own food, right? I had a couple of coolers to keep things safe, so that the food was in good condition. But I only brought nutrient-dense foods this one time, and I'd been struggling with some thoughts in my head. I wasn't looking online. There wasn't anything online 7, 8 years ago about this. There was nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So I didn't have any resources to go to. I just had me, and I decided to turn myself into a guinea pig. I'm going to be a test subject.
Okay. Thomas.
Yeah, and I got deciding. I went, well, all the insulin regimes or methodology that they taught me was you have enough background insulin, and then every time you eat a meal, you would put in another insulin to counteract what that meal is going to raise your blood sugar to.
Okay.
So you ended up taking 4 shots a day or 5, right? And it's kind of complicated because you're going through all this up and down. But the only time you need to take insulin is if you're consuming carbohydrate.
Okay.
Now you do need a little bit of insulin for the background functions, and you need a little bit for the fat we consume and also for the protein, but not as much as what we need for the carbohydrate. So if you reduce the carbohydrate, you can then reduce that short-acting insulin you need for each time you eat. But if you take the long-term, or the basal, they call it, the long-acting insulin, and if you lift that up, and then you balance your foods out so that they only slightly rise, you only need long-term insulin. You don't need any short-term insulin.
Okay.
And the trick to doing that is changing that ratio of fat, protein to carbohydrate. So you reduce the carbohydrate to about 20% of your caloric content. You increase the fat to about 60%. 20%, the rest is protein. Then you can get away with having that basal just draw a straight line of insulin, and when you eat, it only slightly comes up and then it comes back down over a while. It's kind of like riding on a surfboard.
Nice. So basically, eventually, you used your engineer brain, and
Pretty much, yeah.
You start to analyze and say to yourself, 1 + 1. This is insulin. If I eat too much carbohydrate, it will raise my insulin level. So I need eventually to find the right ratio between carbohydrate, between sugar, fat, and protein. And you came to this very useful ratio that it's 60% fat, 20% protein, and 20% of sugar or carbohydrate. Yeah,
exactly. So now the neat part about that is the combination of that. When you make your meal, if you have that 60% by caloric value, which means like 2 tablespoons of oil is about 60% of your calories for the day, right? Oil adds up a lot faster than carbohydrates, right? But what it does is it moderates the absorption of the carbohydrate. So it slows it down, so you don't get that Richter scale effect. It just has a slow rise. So you can bury some carbohydrate in your food as long as you got enough fat to kind of sequester it down so it doesn't absorb.
Yeah. Basically, when we're eating any kind of other food that is full with nutrition, with nutrient, when you adding fat, it's make our body to absorb it slowly instead of just make it go away through our gut. So adding fat is always a good thing. Of course, only if it's a good fat and not just.
Well, exactly. That's the key right there. The good fat.
Exactly.
Right? So I mean, we have essential fatty acids which come from fat. We have essential amino acids which come from protein. I don't know of any essential carbohydrates.
Yeah, but carbohydrate is something that is useful. Eventually, our brain designed to love it, to release dopamine when you get it. but the way that our culture use it and develop it in order to make us an addict to it, this is
Exactly.
not balanced side that causing all of this issue, because carbohydrate it's something that is good for us. We need it. We
We
didn't
need some,
develop.
yes.
Yeah, we didn't develop the way that we have been developed, and now we're gonna say that it's not good. We just need to know how to balance and how to eat it right, instead of just extremely vanish it from our
And
diet.
if we look
But
at,
I
if we
believe,
look, right, if we look at good carbs or bad carbs, we could look at it that way too, right?
yeah,
Or we could,
carb,
we could call it slow carbs, so they break
yeah.
down slowly, or fast carbs, like sugar, it's a little bit too quick.
Yeah, I think slow carb with they have a low index number, right? Low glycemic.
Glycemic index, they call it.
This
Did
is
you know this? Sugar, white sugar is 69 on the glycemic index, but white bread is 72.
wow,
Brown bread's 74 because it's got molasses in it.
because it's water.
Has molasses in it when they make brown bread. They put a little
Okay.
molasses in there. So it's actually a higher
Higher.
yeah. And here's the best one. Saltine crackers
Okay.
are like 89.
Wow.
So 100 being 100% glucose and that speed. So like that was one thing they taught us how to eat when I was becoming a diabetic. Oh, you need a snack? Here, have some saltine crackers and a piece of cheese. And
Yeah,
then I'd watch my,
right?
and then I'd watch my blood sugars go up like that. Like it was just crazy.
Instead of helping you, they're just making it worse.
Exactly.
Okay, so yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so now we understand how you recover from it naturally, basically just by balancing your diet, as you explained to us, by finding the right ratio between protein,
Exactly.
fat, and carbohydrate. Okay, so our
Exactly.
client,
And then stabilizing my insulin, right?
yeah,
So that you had something predictable. So if I remember, I talked about 4 things that we got to balance.
yeah,
Okay. Their system, they went, well, if you check your blood sugar and it's this level, then adjust your insulin so much. And then if you're going to eat, then add more insulin on top. It was a whole bunch of calculations. And they calculated every time you looked at a meal. Well, if you've ever done a lot of math and you're trying to solve an equation, if you've got a 4 variable equation, to solve it, you have to have one that's constant, do you not?
yeah, 1 or 2. Okay.
Do you see what I'm getting at? So if you stabilize your insulin and then have a known amount of food and a known amount of exercise on a daily basis, you've now got 3 out of the 4 calculated out.
Okay, so you have one controlled one that is controlled, and then all the other, it's something
can fall into place.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
if you have something go wrong, then you have the ability to backtrack and analyze where it went wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly. But if you're changing everything on every meal, what was right, what was wrong?
Yeah, you don't know how to track it. You don't have the way to monitor. This is also the one very good thing that I love about functional medicine, that they always try to find the root cause.
Look at the whole picture.
Yeah, exactly. And then deal with it, instead of just only give some kind of patch to any symptom that you have. So the next question is, what was the most helpful step or research for you?
I would have to say just turning myself into a guinea pig for months. I did it for probably 6, 7, 8 months. I was pretty skeptical. I kept kind of going like, I don't know, is this right?
And
like, I feel good.
How did
I feel good. I feel great. My blood sugar.
Sorry, how did you know what is good at what and what is not good? Did you have any option to monitor your?
I have a glucose monitor that I can check every day. So here, I'll even show you. It's actually believe it or not, the company that builds my my blood tester.
Yeah.
You poke your finger and check your blood, is in Israel.
Nice.
The company's called. Here, I'll put a little shout out for them. The company's called Dario, Dario, and they developed a blood glucose meter that works on your phone. So it just plugs into your earpiece, and then you put your strip in, and away it works, right? So
Okay.
I don't know if you can see this, but it says 74%.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there's a small number down there called 5.8.
This is the age one.
74% of the time right now, I am in range, which means I'm between, and I set the range down, I'm between 4.0 and 6.7.
Nice. So is what our this app called, so we can share it also?
Oh, it's called, the machine is called Dario.
No, not the machine, the app that you're using. Also Dario?
Also Dario. That comes with it.
Okay, excellent. So the most helpful step for you is basically by turning yourself to a how it calls, guinea pig?
Well, I turned myself into a guinea pig, right? So I was my own test subject, right?
And by monitor, tests, and
right. So I went from, they said, test a couple of times a day, to I was testing 10, 11, 12 times a day, because they now have continuous glucose monitors. You can put them on, and that'll tell you every 5 minutes what your blood sugar is, right? We didn't have those, right? I didn't have that. So the best thing I had to do was I would check every single hour. I'd poke my finger, or I'd check at certain time limits if I ate something. And I would record, okay, if I ate this every 20 minutes, my blood sugar would be here, here, and then here, here, here. And you would find out where these patterns are. But if you don't check, if you don't have the data, if you don't have the data points, you can't figure out, is your blood sugar rising on a general trend, or is it trending down? Which way is it going? You have to have those multiple data points to figure that out. And that's how I figured it out. Once I got to that and found out that if you mix foods a certain way, and if you take your insulin in a bolus or in a basal rate, so it's constant all the time, then you can start matching things, because now you've got consistency, you've got data that means something to you.
Got it. So you basically raising here a very good solution, because I don't know if most of the people are like you, that are like to analyze and making tests, but you give us eventually the formula that what all of those tests and eventually cause, and the formula is to find the right ratio that this is eventually gave you the basic line of insulin in your body. So everyone don't need now to do like the test. Of course, this is very useful if they will do it, but if they will use your ratio number, it will help them to normalize and balance their sugar blood level, if I understand you.
Certainly, if you follow my protocol, and instead of doing multiple fast-acting shots a day, get your basal rate up, so you have a constant amount of insulin slowly emitting into your body. Basically, what it makes you feel like is your blood sugar is slowly falling downhill all the time. It's like you're walking down. And then the foods you match with that, so that you just kind of come up a hill and you go down a hill. And then you do consistent, regular exercise, so that you make sure you're burning all this stuff up.
Okay. What do you mean by raising your basal up? I didn't like you
all
make
right, so
a shot of insulin, or what?
Right. So there's two terms that we use in the world of diabetes as far as insulin is concerned. Basal, which is a fancy name for base.
I got it. But how you raise it up?
Well, you just add more. So I use I use Lantus insulin, so and it has a curve that's pretty much flat, and a duration time of about 24 to 30 hours.
So you inject into yourself like every 20 to 30
24 hours, once a day. I only take one shot a day.
Once a day. Okay, got it. Because I didn't understand this part. Okay, excellent. Now, our next question is what you will tell to a person or to yourself that is in the same stage you were.
Look for help.
Look for help. Okay.
Look for good help.
From experience, look for help. Don't waste your time. Your health, your wellness is very important. Just look for
help. If
help.
Your doctors are looking at you, pointing a finger or giving you that look over the glasses or the browbeat going, you must be doing something wrong, get a new doctor. because what's happening is their standard practice protocol doesn't work.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work. And I don't understand why they don't do a little bit of data management and go, oh, I had 100 diabetics in here and there's not one of them that's in control. Maybe my crap is wrong. You can't have 100 people that don't want to do it, out of 100. There's going to be somebody that's going to want to do it right. But if the information you're giving them doesn't result in a right answer, you're never going to get a right answer.
Yeah, I think it's not only the doctor fault eventually. Every person need to take care.
You are correct. You are your own master of your own destiny. But if your information that you were given is incorrect.
This is a problem. Yeah, I agree with you about this part. That if you're looking for help and you're getting wrong information, then it's a little bit tricky. So, okay, so not only finding help, but also finding the right help. Let's go.
Finding the right help. And also, I would tell everybody, look, you don't have to feel this way. You don't have to feel crappy. You don't have to feel like your life is falling apart. When your blood sugars go up and down, so do your emotions. So I'm going to say, look, your emotional roller coaster that you're on is directly tied to the blood sugar roller coaster that you're going through. So when you stabilize your blood sugars, all that stuff disappears. All of it disappears. So it's more important to find somebody that can help you to figure out what it is you want to eat, to stabilize what you're eating, stabilize what you're taking for insulin, have a good controlled exercise program that you do daily. Like I walk every single day. I don't care if it's raining, snowing, whatever. It doesn't matter. I at least walk 30 minutes a day because those are those constants in my formula. If you keep enough constants in the formula doesn't change.
Got it. I think we miss one thing. Basically, we're talking about how to balance the blood sugar level, but what we can do with people that they have diabetes type 1, because it's not only balancing your blood sugar level, it's your body not producing insulin.
Right. So you're balancing that with the injection of insulins or insulin therapy.
How they can, or how you eventually recover, because at the beginning you mentioned that it starts from autoimmune disease.
Right. So what I did, that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that back around. When I changed the types of foods that I was eating, I inadvertently healed my gut.
Okay.
So I was also experiencing, I had a little list here I put together. These were the other things over 27 years that ended up bothering me. I had Crohn's, colitis, IBS. So I had diarrhea for 17 years.
Wow.
I had a thyroid condition. All right. So I was hot, cold, things were going all over the place, no energy, then all kinds of energy. I had dysphagia, which is hard to swallow.
Wow. Right? Yeah.
Then another one that developed is called gastroparesis. So remember I was talking about how it moves through your intestines? They quit doing that.
Wow.
Well, that gets interesting, Danny, because you take a shot of insulin, which is going to lower your blood sugar, and you eat, but the food doesn't transit through. Wow. So you don't absorb any of the food. So now you're dealing with a low blood sugar. Yet you have to eat something, but nothing's moving through your gut.
Wow. So you're describing a situation that's happening to people, they eating.
Yeah.
They don't feel any energy and they continue eating.
Exactly. And because my blood sugars were all over the place and so erratic and generally high in essence for the most part, I had very sore legs. My calves were like solid iron. I would wake up in the morning, my ankles wouldn't bend. It was just like, and it would take 20 minutes to get everything loosened up because my entire body was systemically inflamed from this stuff.
Wow. Okay, so by recovering from it, what you did is just changing the food that you eat, changing the food that causing inflammation in your body, that this inflammation cause autoimmune disease, and this autoimmune disease causing all the trouble and all the symptoms that you have. Can you give us
Right.
an example of food that causing you inflammation and how, eventually you cut from it, how you did the cold turkey for it, or how you understand it, it's not doing good for you?
All right. So my body was actually telling me a couple of things even before this. I was still trying to, one of the things they recommended we have was milk, dairy. Well, I would take a drink of dairy and it would just like stop in the throat, almost like an allergic reaction. So I just ended up quitting drinking dairy. I just didn't drink it anymore.
Okay,
And
one
then
plus one. Very simple.
yeah, 1+1, right? You know, if your body doesn't like it, don't do it.
Yeah.
And then eating the bread, that was kind of a combination. The body didn't like it, and my brain didn't like it because there was no way to calculate how to make the blood sugars balance properly because grains are very unpredictable. So I cut out all the grains. And the other things that were higher glycemic, I pretty much took out of my diet. So I took out legumes. Legumes can be very, very high in carbohydrate.
What is it? Leg? Oh, okay, leg. Okay, got it.
Beans,
Beans.
beans,
Yeah.
right? Beans and peas, legumes or legumes, however you want to say it.
Legume.
Um,
I know.
and essentially, once I took those out of the diet, and then of course I tried to ethically source my meats. I didn't want a factory raised beef that was force fed or any of that kind of stuff. I like to have my animals kind of out where they need to, where
Like
they get raised.
organic food.
Yeah. They're raised properly and they're raised in a good environment, right? It's a better product, right? They don't have all the antibiotics and all the other stuff shoved at them that they, to keep them in close vicinity. That's what you have to do to have that work that way. So with all of that, it just, everything started to heal. I started to sleep better. I got rid of my systemic inflammation. And that was the one thing too that I noticed right off the get-go. I lost probably 8 pounds in 4 days.
Wow. Just by cutting.
That was just systemic inflammation. Now let me go from the other direction, because this is true science when you do this. If you assume that because you changed what you eat is why you lost weight, because maybe what you were eating was causing inflammation, if you do it the other way around and reintroduce that food and it causes inflammation, now you got something, right?
Got it.
So I went 3 months completely cleaned up, feeling great. Couldn't believe it. I'd lost, I don't know how many pounds, probably 15 or 20 pounds at that point, actual fat that I'd lost. And I decided one day, well, let's have a piece of pizza as a celebration. Danny, I ate one piece, thin crust, like the cardboard kind, I ate one piece. And I spent all night, moaning and groaning and rolling over and drinking water. And I got up the next day because I was still in my test mode. So I was weighing myself every day at the same time, first thing in the morning, right after voiding everything, right? I was up 9.5 pounds.
Wow. Are you serious with me? 9.5 pounds of inflammation?
9.5 pounds, and it happened in less than 24 hours. And then over the next 2 or 3 days, I lost all of that because I stayed away from it.
Wow.
But it's a good 3 to 4 days before your system gets back straightened out again.
It's one health pizza, let's say it like that, slice of pizza.
Well, that's the wheat. They've destroyed wheat on us. Do you realize that over here in this country, there's several parts per billion of glyphosate, which is that Roundup from Monsanto, right, in the wheat? Because even though Canada doesn't have a genetically modified wheat, we have dwarf wheat, which is a little shorter. And what that means is you can't cut it, put it into a windrow and let it all dry and then pick it up later. It's got to be cut standing.
Mm.
And to have thousands of acres all at the same dry point is nearly impossible because there's different stages of growing in the plants, right? Yeah. So they approved glyphosate, Roundup, as a desiccant to dry out the grain head before you harvest it. Okay. So glyphosate is now in probably 80 to 85% of all the flour that floats around this country. Mm. And it instantly instantly kills most of the bacteria in your gut, or a good percentage of it, especially the symbiotic ones, guys that are good for you. And it puts what I call a dysbiosis. All right. So they're not in balance with each other.
Making a lot of problem. Yeah.
And it just starts to go downhill from there.
Okay.
A lot of my clients that I take through my protocol and I get them off all this, what we call addictive products, usually because they're high carbohydrate or there's something else in them. When I take them off that, they start feeling really good. They start feeling better. And then they get like me. They get a little cocky. Oh, well, what's a little bite going to do? Right. And they'll go and they'll have a cookie, or they'll have a slice of bread. And the next thing you know, they're calling me going, oh, God, I think I'm dying. I'm like, what'd you get into? Well, I just thought I'd try a little,
Okay. Can you tell us like a little bit about what people can eat? We know what they cannot eat, but what they can eat, like for
and I know that's always a panic, because when I say I take dairy and I take grains out of a diet, everybody goes, oh, what's left to eat?
Exactly.
But we eat those two items in 1,000 different forms and fashions, right? So we're really quite almost like mono in what we eat. A lot of people, if you look at them, there's probably grains present in every single meal, whether it's cereal in the morning or a bagel or a sandwich at lunchtime, or the biscuits and whatever. It's always the same thing. So what can you eat? Well, I'll tell you what. I eat a lot of berries. I eat a lot of low glycemic fruit. I eat lots of vegetables, cruciferous vegetables. So, broccoli, cauliflower, all that kind of stuff, right? Brussels sprouts, that type of thing. I still eat animal protein, but I only eat it once a day, usually at the end of the day. And I never eat a piece bigger than the palm of the size of my hand, thickness, size, with no fingers and cut off here. Why? Because guess what? That's the size of the stomach right there. When you take your hand and make it into a fist, that's actually the size of your stomach. If you eat a piece of protein bigger than that, you don't have enough acid stored in your stomach to digest it all.
Wow. Okay.
So you will actually get more. You will get more from your meal by eating less protein than eating more.
Got it.
All right.
Okay. It was a good.
All those proteins are available. Sorry. And then I eat a lot of nuts and a lot of seeds. All right, because they're not as protected in lectin as much as the grains are, so they're a lot easier to digest. They have higher contents of oil. They have better proteins in them, and it just works better for you.
Okay, so thank you for Sorry, yeah.
No worries. From that, you can actually create even similar meal by using substitute products.
Got it. Thank you for sharing those good examples. So now we know what you can eat, and not saying there is nothing to eat. Okay, what do you think will be the first baby step or action step or a small little step a person can do in order to begin his healing journey?
To heal from type 1, number one, I would stop eating the bad foods, and I would stop thinking that you can eat sugary drinks or have sugary drinks. Even though type 1s know they shouldn't have those, sometimes we kind of get, working on them. I would also recommend stopping any sugar-free beverages, thinking that that's
artificial sugar.
Artificial sweeteners are horrible.
Horrible at the same time.
They're absolutely poison to our body, right?
Yeah.
And the more things that we poison our body with, the less likely we are to feel what's actually going on, to be able to know what to do right. So the first steps is stop polluting your body.
Yeah, love it.
Right? Stop the processed foods. Start making your own food. If you don't cook, learn how. This has never been an easier time in the world to figure out how to cook. There's more YouTube videos on it than you can pick a stick at. Right? So start making your own food. And when you touch your own food, and like I have my own garden in the back, I harvest my own stuff, I come out with my own stuff. I made pesto yesterday out of cilantro and arugula. I got a big batch of pesto that I made, right? So when you make your own food, you actually appreciate it more. You sort of prep your body knowing that it's coming because you've been smelling it before, you've been touching it. It's almost like the bacteria know it's coming and they're prepped for it.
Nice.
And it makes everything so much better. And, eating's a very enjoyable thing that we have in our life when we have very few enjoyable things in our life to be happy about.
Emotional eating, yeah.
Right? And when we take all these things that supposedly people love to eat, but there's a difference between loving it and there's a difference between being addicted to it. A lot of people are addicted to gluten. Did you know that the gluten protein breaks down to another protein called gliadin, which is actually an X-orphan, which will attach itself to the opiate receptor in your brain?
Wow, I didn't know that.
So if you get away from, remember that up and down cycle I was talking about, eating bread?
Mm-hmm.
If you get through the day by not eating any, in 5 or 6 hours or 8 hours of never eating bread, you're going to want to eat it because that's when the addictive part kicks in.
Got it.
The other part is when your blood sugar is going up and down, it's because you're hungry all the time. If you eat bread, you'll eat 400 to 500 calories a day more than you want to.
Okay.
You're trying to figure out how that works?
Yeah. So just stop eating bread, basically, or
all grains. That includes pasta.
Okay. Our next question is: was it worth it, and how do you feel today about yourself after you completed your healing journey?
I have never felt better. I wish I did this right from the beginning 35 years ago. That's the only regret I have. I wish somebody had been able to teach me this 35 years ago, and I would have had 35 years of great living.
Wow.
But I had 27 years of crappy living, and now I've got the last 7 years have been wonderful. But I'm no spring chicken. I'll be 57 this year, so
Okay, so
what do you do, right?
Yeah, it's better late than never. So
exactly. So I do all kinds of things now, that I probably wouldn't do before. I wasn't able to exercise very well because I had so many shots of insulin in me. Sometimes not all of it would absorb, and then you'd go out for a walk, and then it would absorb, and then boom, your blood sugar down. This is a very common problem. They tell us to exercise, but it's hard to exercise until you change your insulin schedule, like I did. With just the basal in there, I don't have any short acting falling in all of a sudden, surprising me. So everything is nice and slow and gradual. So now I go out and I play a game called pickleball. I think we talked about this on the first call that we had. I don't know if you ever had a chance to look it up, but it's a racket sport. It's fun. It's played on a volleyball sized court with like a tennis net stretched across it. And it's social. It's fun. It gives you a way to get some of your frustrations out. But I play it for 2 hours at a time without affecting my blood sugar, erratically. Right?
Wow. Okay.
And I play against guys that are in their 30s, and I beat them. So
nice.
That's a big thing. I like to be able to still be, as physical as I want to be. I'm kind of an efficiency expert. I'd rather lay than sit, and sit than stand, and I'd rather lay than sit, right? That's being an efficiency expert, right?
Yeah, so I understand from you that although it was very late, still it was worth it, the way you are.
But, and the neat part about it, when I was doing it, and I was going through it, all of a sudden, all the people that I knew socially in my family were starting to, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? They keep asking me, what are you doing? And that's the reason I became a coach, was because I had so many people that I knew saw the difference in me that they went, what are you doing? Because whatever you're doing, I want to do.
Wow. Nice. Show by example, or lead by example.
Lead by example.
Okay. So our next question, and basically it will be the end. What are you doing these days? And you start to mention that you are coaching, right?
Correct. So I'm a registered nutrition health coach. So I work strictly with nutrition as a full functional medicine or integrative approach. And I look for the common causes right down to the core. And I take everybody pretty much through the same protocol, and then we adjust as individuality tells us to. But I heal the gut first. Because trying to balance blood sugars if you've got a constant inflammation problem will never happen.
Mm.
If your body's in distress, you'll never be able to balance your blood sugars, because that's one of the things that first goes out of whack when your body's in distress. Right?
Okay.
So that's kind of the first things that I do. And then from there, we work on insulin management. We work on the food. We basically bring everybody's life back to them, and they're amazed. They're absolutely amazed. Now, I work with more than just type 1 diabetics. I wanted to mention this a little bit earlier. We were talking about the action of different foods in your body and what it does to a person that's not diabetic as far as producing insulin. And what I found was this program that I worked on, by balancing your blood sugars in a diabetic, is the same program that people need that aren't diabetic to lose weight.
Nice. Okay.
Or to recover from Crohn's, colitis, IBS, or they may have gastroparesis, or they may have thyroid, or they may have even Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis, or you name. There's over 100 and some odd autoimmune diseases, and there's more of them coming on, which makes no sense. Why are we getting more of them?
Okay. Yeah, I'm fully agree with you, and it's amazing. First of all, it's so great to hear that you do what you do. I'm so happy to get to know a person like you that is leading by example, and it's making the world a healthier place. And the way that you crack it for yourself, and now you are sharing it with other people, and you want to help them, and how for me it's amazing how it's so eventually simple.
Exactly.
Not easy, but simple.
Thanks for saying that.
Healthy.
Yeah.
So simple, but it's hard. It's hard because we have addiction. It's hard because we're living in a modern life, and it's hard because we're not aware all the time. But if a person wants it and is willing to make the effort, it's very simple, and he can do it and feel immediately change and immediately get his life back. And I look at you and the way that you talk and the way that you share it, and you can see the result basically on a person that actually went through it. And so thank you for sharing it. And now tell us how people can reach you. We know that you are working as a registered nurse health coach, registered
nutrition health coach.
Nutrition health coach, sorry. And how people can reach you.
All right, sounds great. Well, you kind of mentioned the thing about simplifying it, and that's what my website is called. It's type1simplified.com.
Nice connection.
All right. Yeah, nice little segue there that you gave me. You can also join me on at Type 1 Simplified on Facebook. You could reach me by messenger on there if you want. Just go ahead and text me up there if you want. We can even talk on that. And then I also have a group on Facebook, which is Diabetes Simplified. So you can join that group if you want. Ask a question. We'll try to solve any of the simple, easy ones. If it gets a little more than that, then maybe join me and we'll run through a program with you and get you fixed right up. So the other spot is pretty much just if you need to email me, it's Lyle, Lyle, at type1simplified.com.
Excellent. I will mention all of those link also in the
Thank you.
In the interview where I will post it, and also on my website, so people could reach you. And now, I want to conclude. I just want to make it more clear. Basically, you have been diagnosed with diabetes type 1. Diabetes type 1, it's a disease that your body not producing insulin because its autoimmune system attacking the cells that producing insulin. This is
Correct.
what you were diagnosed and what you were fighting for more than 30, 30 years, 35 years, right?
Correct.
So after you implement your protocol, what what are your diagnosis today? Like, what is your health status today? Does people can recover from it? Does it can be only a monitor and be controlled and still living a healthy life? Like, what people eventually can reach?
All
And
right. What you can expect is this:
yeah,
far superior control. You'll never cure type 1 diabetes. Can't be cured. But you can certainly bring it into a good qualitative management program so that all of a sudden your body comes back. When it's in control, the body will heal itself and you'll be able to live a very full life. You'll still have to pay attention to the fact that you're not like everybody else. You're going to have to eat probably a little more frequently. You're going to have to check your blood sugar when you question it. That's what I tell everybody. If you're wondering what your blood sugar is, it's probably time to check it. Because there's little things that happen subconsciously we don't always pay
yeah,
attention to. Right?
yeah. And
Uh,
the sooner that we will treat our autoimmune disease, maybe we will save more beta cells that producing insulin, right?
right. So my question is this: what I would like to do is find somebody who has just been recently diagnosed and start them on an autoimmune protocol right away, because then you might be able to salvage some of the pancreas. Because here's the question I have for everybody out there. I developed additional autoimmune conditions, which means I was still in autoimmune health. Why didn't we stop it the first time when the first disease showed up?
Yeah,
Do you see where I'm going with that?
yeah, I see where you're going on. So you offer people when they are diagnosed with when they have their first diagnosis, come
Yeah,
and let's immediately start a autoimmune protocol in order
you
to
bet.
try to save some of the very crucial cells that help in our body.
Let's not add insult to injury.
Okay, Lyle, thank you so much. Really,
Oh, thank you, sir.
I learned a lot. I don't know. I read a lot of things, but you nailed me. You nailed a lot of information that I didn't add. I didn't know how to connect them. But
Okay.
after talking with you, it seemed like you have a lot of information and background and understanding, and the way that you analyze and connect everything. A lot of people can get learn from you, and thank you for sharing your story, and continue do what you're doing,
Nice.
and that's it. Do you have
I'll,
any
I'll, I'll leave
last?
you one final little story here.
Yeah,
You
this is
asked
what I
me.
try to say. Do you have
You
any
asked
last
me.
word?
You asked me 1 minute ago. Like what is it like the way you live? And let me add this to you. 7 months ago, 8 months ago now, um, I was into my doctor to get some prescriptions renewed. Right, that's the only time I go see him. He's my gatekeeper to the medical system. Right.
Mm-hmm.
He looked at me and he finally said, because I'd drop in, I'd talk about people I was working with and what I got him back from, and he'd known a couple of these people, plus he knew me, and he's looking at my blood sugars, going, "God, I don't know how you do this. You're amazing how you balance your blood sugars." He came to me and he said, "Let's do this," and I said, "Do what?" He said, "Coach me."
Your doctor.
So I coached my doctor for 6 months. The first thing that happened, he's a young man, he's 39 compared to me, right? First thing that happened was I got rid of his sugar addiction. We got rid of his little spare tire on his tummy. But the biggest thing was, ever since med school, he had eczema.
Okay.
As soon as we cleaned up his gut, put him on the protocol, and got it straightened around, his eczema went away.
Wow.
That's an autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
So then he went to a doctor's meeting. They had cookies at the table. He wasn't thinking there a few days into this, and he got into a cookie. 20 minutes later, he was itching.
Wow.
So 3 times he stepped back into it and cleaned himself up again. And I said, Doc, you wanted to see some studies as to what I was doing and why it was good. Do you get any better study than the one of yourself?
Okay.
And he says, no, I don't. And I said, so he'll never change the way he eats now. Ironically, what he had to do, though, was he had to drop me as a patient, because that's kind of a conflict of interest, apparently. But he has to drop me as a patient because he wants me to be available for him to refer patients to.
Okay.
So he's one of the guys in the medical profession here that I highly respect, because he understands. He was trained everything about the plumbing system, the electrical system, how the hardware all works in the body, but they have no training on what fuel to put in this machine to make it run.
Yeah.
But now he does. Now he knows that it makes all the difference in the world.
Glad to hear that there is doctors that have open-minded.
His cholesterol improved. His blood pressure improved. Everything improved. Like all the stats that they go by, everything improved in him. So now he's a believer. He can't not say that it doesn't work.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Again, leading by example. Thank you so much, Lyle.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dan.
Have a great week.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye now.
If you like the interview and you think it can help you or people you care about, please join us today on a mission to make the world a healthier place and share it with them. Also, subscribe to our channel in order to be always updated. If you are suffering today and you're looking for support, feel free to join our Facebook group, Functional Medicine Healing Journey Support Group, where you can ask questions and get support from functional medicine certified health coach from all over the world, including me. If you have any suggestion, please leave a response. I will review it later. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are just one healthy habit away.